Okay, let's look at adding fractions. It's listed here the steps you need to do to add fractions. In step 1, I've highlighted my preferred method. So for step 1 is change mixed numbers into improper fractions. So if we do have a mixed number, first of all change it into an improper fraction. In this video, there will not be any mixed numbers. That will be in the next video. We need to change fractions so they have a common denominator. So if they don't have a common denominator, a common bottom number, we need to change them so they have a common denominator. So in these first two examples here, they already have a common denominator, so we don't need to do that. In the example 3, 4, 5 and 6 here, the denominators are different, so we will need to change it so that both fractions have a common denominator. Once we've changed it so they have a common denominator, we add the numerators and keep the denominator the same. Or if we're doing subtraction, we subtract the numerators and keep the denominator the same. And then we just check to see if we can, the last step, if we can cancel or simplify our fraction. So let's look at the first example. As I said, there are no mixed numbers, so we don't need to worry about step 1. Step 2, change the fractions so they have a common denominator. Well, in example 1, they already have a common denominator. So we add the numerators, the numbers on the top, 3 plus 4 is 7, and we keep the denominator the same. We look to see if we can cancel or simplify that fraction, and nothing goes into both 5 and 7, so we leave the answer as 7 over 5. Let's look at our second example. They already have a common denominator, so it's as simple as adding the two numbers on top, 6 plus 2 is 8, and keeping the denominator the same. Alright, the next examples we do have to make the denominators the same. So we need to think of a number that both 4 and 6 go into, and it needs to be the lowest common denominator. So the lowest possible number that both 4 and 6 go into, and that is 12. So we're going to change our denominator to 12. Then what you do is you say, what did I do to 4 to get it to 12? So what did I times 4 by to get it to 12? And the answer is 3. So that's the number I started with on the top, 3, and I need to multiply that by 3. Whatever I did to the bottom, remember I multiplied the bottom by 3 to get 12, so I must multiply the top by 3. Let's look here, 6 to 12. I multiplied 6 times 2 to give me 12, so on the top I put the number that was originally there, and I must also multiply that by 2. Whatever I multiply the bottom by, I must multiply the top by. 3 times 3 is 9, so it's 9 over 12. 2 times 5 is 10, so it's 10 over 12. Now our denominators are the same, so we just add 9 plus 10 to give us 19, and we keep the denominator the same. Let's look at the next example. This is a subtraction, but the method is the same. We need to get a common denominator. So I need to say, think what number do both 5 and 4 go into? And the lowest possible common denominator is 20. To get from 5 to 20, I times by 4. So that's the number I started with on the top, 4, and I must multiply that by 4, because I multiplied the bottom by 4. Let's look at the next fraction, 4 to 20. 4 times 5 is 20, so I multiplied the bottom by 5, so that's the number I started with on the top, and I must also multiply that by 5. We multiply those numbers out, 4 4s are 16 over 20, minus 5 3s are 15 over 20, and then now that it's a subtraction, I say 16 subtract 15 is 1, and we keep the denominator the same. Okay, two more examples. They might look a bit harder because of the negatives and that sort of thing. The concept is the same. Let's get a common denominator. The common denominator here is what number does both 3 and 2 go into? The answer is 6. 3 times 2 gives me 6. So I must also multiply the number that we had on the top by 2. 2 times 3 gives me 6, so that's the number I started with on the top. I also must multiply that by 3. Always remembering, whatever you do to the bottom, you must do to the top. So now I've got negative 2 over 6 plus 3 over 6. Okay, this goes back to the top, one of the topics, or the topic we did at the start of the year. We're going to put it all over 6. Let's look at the numbers on the top. We have negative 2 plus 3. So think of our number line. Negative 2 is where we start, and then we move 3, and the plus 3 means we move 3 to the right, so negative 2 plus 3 is 1 over 6. So that last step goes back to the number line and the topic we did at the start of the year. Okay, one more example. Our common denominator here is going to be 12. What do I do from 4 to get to 12? I times by 3. That's the number I started with on the top. I times that by 3. 6 times 2 gives me 12, so I also must multiply the 1 by 2. Multiplying out the brackets, negative 9 on 12, subtract 2 over 12. So it's going to all be over 12, and then I have negative 9 subtract 2. Thinking back to our number line, I'm going to start at negative 9, I'm going to subtract 2. So I move 2, and because I subtracted, it's 2 to the left. So negative 9, move 2 more to the left, gives me negative 11 over 12. So just going back up to the top. In this video, we don't worry about step 1 because there are no mixed numbers. So step 2. Make sure they have a common denominator. So we change the fractions to have a common denominator if they don't. And then once we've got a common denominator, add the numerators, keep the denominator the same. And just remember, always check to see if we can simplify the fraction in the answer. And in this case, there was none that we could write in simpler form.